Welcome to Oops, I'm Evolving. I'm Morgan, and this is the podcast where we take those big, mind-blowing spiritual concepts and break them down into the real life shit you can actually use. Because let's be honest, real growth doesn't happen in the highlight reel. It happens in the shadows, in the messy, uncomfortable WTF moments. So let's talk about it, air it all out, and level up. Hello and welcome back to Oops, I'm Evolving. Today I have an episode that I gotta say, it just kind of hit me out of the blue. I was listening to a podcast and the way she described this topic exploded my brain, and immediately I was like, oh my God, that's me. And you know what? I hope that this happens to you when you're listening to my podcast, because this is how we grow. This is how we evolve, is when we can finally spot our shit. And guess what? I found out, you guys, I'm a martyr. I had no fucking idea, because I'm kind of ashamed to admit, but I had a very black and white specific description of what a martyr was. And that was not me. I'm just not your typical martyr. But the way she described a martyr was having this relationship of I will give this and I will get X in return. And that is something I do. And so I was like, oh my God, I need to explore this further. And then if you remember in the last episode, Riley X was talking about Pluto moving out of Capricorn and into Aquarius. That happened in November. And for those of you that don't know, Pluto has a really long time in each sign. So Pluto in Capricorn was there for 18 years, something like that. So most of us only remember Pluto in Capricorn. We don't really remember before that. Now it is switched into Aquarius, and we're still kind of operating like it was in Capricorn. So Capricorns can, push through. They can make anything happen. They're meant to climb that mountain, right? Keep going, keep going, keep going. But now with Pluto in Aquarius, it's really asking us to say, how are we moving up that mountain, and is it authentic? And then just an added little bonus here. Pluto was retrograde when I had this epiphany that I was a martyr. And all of this came about because of one little phrase in a podcast. And I was struggling. I was going through my own inner turmoil and my own inner stories. And I was really working through that. And it was as soon as I realized that I was being a martyr, things completely shifted for me. Because finally, just recognizing the stories I was telling myself. And that's how powerful it can be. So, with that being said, let's talk about martyrdom. Oh no, I'm sorry. I know. But being a martyr, the way I thought of it before, was not sneaky, right? It was the way I thought of it before was how you watch your mom or your mother-in-law literally give their last breath to someone and then turn around and complain about it. Okay? That's the way I was always thinking about a martyr. And I wouldn't be that extreme of a martyr. But I can tell you that it's a sneaky little asshole, and it snuck up on me. It has this way of presenting itself that feels a lot like love, feels a lot like service or hard work, but actually it's this self-betrayal in disguise. So when we talk about how this whole Pluto thing is related, I'll just tell you the story. We're gonna just get real and vulnerable, because that's what we fucking do here. So as I was launching the group chat, I had a lot of triggers come up. I launched it early because I felt myself just working up. I felt I was just exploding. And I phrased it to a girlfriend that I was I felt like I was walking through a cemetery on a zombie movie, and all my triggers and all my shadows were zombies that were popping up out of the earth and I was having to like kick them down constantly. That's what it felt like when I launched the group chat. It was just a lot of triggers that were coming up for me to be seen. And one of the things that was coming up for me was this expectation that I had put on the group chat, not on the women that are in the group chat, but this expectation of like what the group chat is going to do for me, right? How this is going to open doors for me, or how this, whatever these stories were, okay? And I had a lot of like, what is the group chat going to do for me? What am I going to get out of it? And the way that this woman phrased it on the podcast, and I'll link the podcast below, so if you guys want to go listen to it, sweet, help yourself. But the way that she linked it was, she was talking about how in business, you can put something out, you can put a product out, you can open a new service, whatever, you're building a personal brand, whatever you're doing. And she was saying that like, those people that are like, oh my God, I've just worked so hard and I've just been pushing for so long and like just nothing is happening for me and I'm just getting nowhere and like I'm just getting so tired. And she was like, when you do that, all I hear is, I'm a martyr. And I was like, wait, what? So newsflash. Okay. So now the way Pluto kind of works its way in there is when a planet is retrograde, it gives us a minute to kind of look at what's not working. It kind of helps us reflect on things. So Pluto being in Aquarius is asking us about authenticity. Are you being authentic? Fine, maybe you still want to climb that mountain, but are you doing it in a way that is authentic to you? So the way I was putting this and applying it to my own life is, I still feel like launching the group chat was and is in 1000% in alignment with me and what I want to do. Okay. I think it's amazing. It's still an incredible thing. I fucking love it to my core, right? Totally in alignment with the group chat. However, where I was out of alignment was maybe how I was getting there, because I was working like a dog. I was doing all the things that all the experts say that you should do. And then on top of it, I had these stories about what the group chat was going to give me. Of course, I wanted to serve people, and probably like so much so that I was super freaked out about launching it, because like, oh my God, is it going to be good enough? Blah, 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 right? All these stories that we tell ourselves. But I was also thinking about what it was going to do for me. So that's how I landed on the fact that, holy shit, Morgan, you're a martyr. So then I started doing a lot more introspection, and here we are. So I thought I should share with you in case maybe you are secretly a martyr as well. Like I said, this is a pattern that feels like self-love, service, or even hard work, but actually it's just self-betrayal. You might be thinking, that's not me. Nope, that's not me. I don't do that. That's not something I struggle with. Hey, guess what? I did too. But I'm telling you right now, martyr mode is way more common than we think. And today we are pulling the curtain all the way back, and we're just going to air this shit out. So first, let's define what a martyr is. So it's not like the religious or like dramatic version like I was thinking about, but there's an everyday emotional kind of martyr. Martyrdom is when you abandon yourself in the name of being good, being needed, or being loved. You may not even know you're doing it because it hides behind roles. You may be the helper. You might be the strong one. You might be the loyal one. You could be the team player. And my favorite is always the available friend or the over-functioning parent, right? It is so normalized in our culture, especially for women and caretakers, that we take that like a badge of honor. But the truth is that martyrdom is not noble. Nope, it's not heart-centered, and it will leave you really fucking bitter when you let it run the show. Because like I said, you have these underlying beliefs about what you're going to get out of the thing you're doing. It is a silent transaction. Give, and deep down, I expect something in return. That something might be validation. Maybe they'll finally see my worth. It could be loyalty. They'll never leave me if I do this. Could be maybe you're looking for a financial return. If I hustle this hard, it has to pay off. Could be recognition. Finally, somebody will notice me. And then permission. If I do enough, I'll finally deserve to rest. Even if you're not saying these things out loud, because when we say them out loud, they actually kind of sound crazy, right? It's an energetic contract. And when it isn't fulfilled, it leaves you feeling bitter, unappreciated, or completely exhausted. And that, my friends, is the moment when martyrdom steps in and it whispers, look at everything I've done and still it's not enough. And then the stories start to spin. We don't just do the work, we spin the story, right? Maybe you're saying, I always have to carry the workload. I always have to carry the team. Or maybe you're telling yourself, they don't value me, but I do so much. Why can't they see what I do for them? Or maybe you're saying, no one works as hard as I do. Or if I stop, everything's going to fall apart. If I suffer now, I will succeed later, right? I'll just hustle right now. It'll be really painful, but you know what? I'll succeed later. But it's a trap. There's a twisted comfort in the identity that you get from being the martyr. It gives you a purpose. It gives you a sense of moral high ground and maybe even feel like you are superior. But it also leaves you resentful, exhausted, disconnected from your heart, and completely out of alignment with your true path. Because martyrdom is a performative alignment. You're doing all of the quote unquote right things. You're just maybe doing them from the wrong place. And that's where that authenticity comes into play here. We convince ourselves that we're being selfless, but really we're negotiating for love, we're performing for approval, and we're hoping that someone will finally give us back what we keep giving away. And when they don't, dun, 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 resentment. Look at everything I've done and still nothing. No one sees me. Oof, you guys. That's the martyr wound. The ways in which martyr can show up, because it can show up in work and it can show up in regular life. But maybe the workplace martyr looks like you take on everyone's extra work. You don't say no to anyone for anything. You stay late. You never ask for help. I see this a lot of times with generators or manifesting generators because you guys can do the work. So you feel like you don't have a good enough reason to say no. So you just keep taking on and taking on and taking on. And why do you do that? What is the underlying reason for doing that? Because you might be low-key, either trying to prove your worth, which that's exactly what you're doing, but you're maybe hoping that your boss will notice, right? And won't it feel so good when they're like, oh my God, good job, Morgan. You're so irreplaceable. Here's a raise. You're amazing. But that never actually fucking happens, you guys. And we know that. Instead, you get burnt out, really burnt out, overlooked, and you probably even get passed over for that raise. And then you spiral. After everything I've done, this is how they treat me, right? Example number 2 is the family martyr. You do everything for your family. You plan the events. You remember the birthdays. You clean up after everyone. You put yourself last every damn time. And a part of you loves taking care of them, right? But then the other part of you is silently screaming, why doesn't anyone do this for me? And it's so sad. And instead of asking for what you need or saying no, you double down and you do more, right? That makes sense. And you're hoping that one day they'll magically read your mind and they'll give you back what you never asked for. Example number 3 is the friendship martyr. Maybe you are always the one reaching out. You're always the one checking in. You're always the one holding space, but no one ever checks in on you. And instead of speaking up, you tell yourself, well, Like, I'm just the strong one. Nobody checks up on me. I'm built a little bit differently. That person's going through a lot, and what I'm going through isn't, so bad. So it's okay. It's okay. Right? Does that sound familiar? Yeah, because martyrdom makes you build entire identities around being the one who doesn't need any fucking help. Crazy. Until you quietly start resenting everyone for believing the lie that you created, right? Because you're telling everybody that you don't need any help. You've created this lie. You've created this persona that doesn't need anything for anyone. And then you get pissed off when they believe your lie. So what's really going on underneath martyrdom? What is the core belief here? I kind of already said it, but the core belief is I have to earn my worth. Whether this is through suffering, overgiving, being the responsible one, or being the emotionally bulletproof one, for some reason, you believe that love is conditional. You think that rest, support, or joy has to be earned, and you're scared that if you stop giving, you'll stop being loved. That's not just exhausting, it's actually heartbreaking too. What keeps the martyrdom alive is the stories that we tell ourselves about what's happening. Instead of saying, I'm overextending myself, we say, I'm just a really hard worker. They really need help. I'm super loyal. And while that might be true, the question is, are you being loyal to them, or are you actually being disloyal to yourself? Because the story that we spin is what becomes the trap. It justifies our exhaustion. It makes us feel righteous when we're suffering, and it makes us feel like a victim in our own life choices. Oh, I know, I'm sorry. This episode is quite intense, but when we're stuck in those stories, we can't see the exit sign because we think that we're doing the right thing. But the red flag for you is going to be the feelings. If you resonate with any of the feelings or the stories that you're hearing in this episode, it might be a time for you to really dive in to those places where you're exhausted, those places where you feel bitter, those places where you feel really frustrated, and look at what's going on and what are your core motivations behind doing whatever it is that you're doing that is leaving you feeling those ways. So the answer to getting away from martyrdom is to stop giving from lack. And what I mean when I say that, because we throw that phrase around in spiritual spaces like everyone just knows what it means, but most people don't. And people who do know usually learn it the hard way. So let me paint you the picture. Giving from lack is this sneaky little thing that can look really generous. It can look selfless and even noble on the outside. But on the inside, remember, pay attention to feelings. It feels tight. It feels heavy. And there's a resentment under the surface that nobody sees. And sometimes you don't even see it because you've completely normalized it. You're showing up for everyone. You're overextended. You're being so available that your body is breaking down. Hello, burnout. Your emotions are fried, and yet you keep going because you think that's love or loyalty or what it means to be a good person, a good friend, a good wife, a good mother, whatever. But let me say this really clear. Giving from lack is when you're offering your time, energy, support, or presence not because you want to, but because you're afraid of what will happen if you don't. You don't want to disappoint. You don't want to be abandoned. You don't want to feel like you're failing someone. So those things, those are not love. That's not coming from a heart-centered place. It's actually coming from a fear-based place. And I get it because most of us were trained into this, especially if you were raised in environments where love had strings attached. A lot of us learned really early, like really childhood early, that our safety, our acceptance, our place in the family or in the community was tied to how useful we were. And you don't have to have, like bad parents for this to happen. We learn this in really, really subtle ways, actually. Things like, oh my gosh, you're such a good helper. How could I do this without you? Things like that. You were the helper. Maybe you were the peacekeeper. Maybe you were the kid that didn't cause problems. Maybe you had older sibling or younger sibling that just required more work than you did. And you learned somewhere along the way that if you were too much or if you had needs of your own, people would pull away. Maybe they'd get mad. Maybe they'd go cold. And once again, good people can handle situations in these ways, but it just teaches a child that if they want that warm, affectionate love from someone, that they need to be a certain way in order to get it. And I want to stress this again. Your parents can be incredible parents. It could just mean that maybe their emotional depth couldn't handle a young child that was having big feelings, right? It doesn't mean that they were bad. It just means that maybe they weren't perfect. And that's why it's so important to teach our children just to love themselves, because if they love themselves, they can work through anything else. But okay, I digress. So what did you do? You adapted and you became what they needed. You started taking care of people. You put yourself last. And over time, that story really calcified into a solid belief. And that belief is, I am valuable when I give. I am lovable when I sacrifice. And I am safe when I'm needed. That's where the martyr is born. It's not from ego. It's from wounding. It's from a place of survival. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't mean you have yucky motivations. It doesn't mean anything other than you found a way to survive through something. You found a coping mechanism, and now you're still operating that way. But guess what, baby? We're evolving and we're dealing with this. So, yay you. If you find yourself saying, if I don't do it, who will? They don't appreciate me. No one ever does. It must be nice to rest. I don't get that luxury. I give so much and I get nothing back. If you hear those things, do you feel that ache in your chest? There's a deep unmet need there, a need to be seen, held, supported. But instead of honoring that need and learning to fill it, you override it by giving it more, doing more, providing harder. That's giving from lack. And let me tell you, it will never bring you the peace you're chasing, because peace doesn't come from being needed. It comes from being known. And that can't happen if you're hiding behind the persona of the giver, the good one, the selfless one. So, like I said, the remedy to being a martyr is living a heart-centered life. But what the fuck does that actually mean? Let's talk about it like real people, right? A heart-centered life isn't some like floaty, magical fantasy. It's actually kind of really fucking messy and really difficult. But it's yours. So it's a life where you pause before saying yes to things. You check in with your body. You see if that's something that's actually right for you or not. So where you ask yourself, is this coming from love or is this coming from fear? It's where you tell yourself the fucking truth, even when it's really uncomfortable, right? You might need to tell yourself, I'm actually really tired and I need to rest right now. You might need to tell yourself, I'm pretending to be okay when I'm not. You might need to tell yourself, I am so resentful of how much I give, or I want more and I need more. That, my friends, is living from your heart. It's not being perfect. It's not always giving, and it's not having it together, but it's being real. And first and foremost, you're being real with yourself. So how do you start, right? Let's get practical, because I know that you're sitting there going like, okay, cool. But how do I start putting myself first when I've never actually done it before? And here's what I'll tell you. Number one, build safety in telling the truth. Okay. So even in the subtle ways I found that I was being a martyr. I struggle with martyrdom in my friends and in my professional life, like a lot. I had to really look at this and start being honest with myself. So when you're looking at this, no matter if you're martyr in all areas or just a few, or maybe even just one, but start by writing it down and just fucking saying it, okay? Whether you need to whisper it in the shower or go on a walk and say it to your voice notes, say the words, I'm over this. I hate this job. I'm exhausted and no one knows. I don't feel loved. I feel used. Because you can't create an aligned life if it's built on lies. So we need to make sure that we are calling it like we see it. And it's just to yourself, okay? Just you owe yourself that honesty. Number 2, check your inner contract, okay? Ask yourself, what do I believe I have to do to be loved or accepted? Because you're going to be really surprised what you uncover. Things like, I have to earn everything. That's a big one for me. I can't ever let people down. Oh my God, you guys, if I feel like I'm going to let somebody down, I could melt right now. If I stop giving, I'll be abandoned. If I stop giving, people won't want me anymore, right? Those are your martyr codes. And once you see them, you can actually start to kind of like call them out and rewrite them and change the game a little bit. And then step number 3 is fill your cup. We touched on this on the self-love episode, but I'm not talking like go get pedicures, like that bullshit. No, we're not. I mean, fine, but we're not talking about that. What I actually mean is getting to a place where you can rest without guilt, where you can say no without over-explaining yourself. Maybe you can say no without explaining yourself at all. Oh, that'd be crazy. Maybe letting go and let people be disappointed. And then the last way that you can do this is give yourself what you've been begging others for. And this one is fucking huge. Learning to self-source your own love and safety is huge. When you can take all of that, I'm not getting enough, they're not loving me, you can turn that in on yourself and you can give yourself that energy. Holy shit, it's a game changer. So I'll just tell you for an example, I was going through a really tough time a couple months ago. I was having a really hard day. I'd done some big girl things that just sent my nervous system into a frenzy. And I wanted somebody to just hug me, tell me that it was okay. But nobody was doing that. And I was in the shower sobbing and I was just spinning all these stories in my head, which I know I'm not the only one that does that. And finally I was like, Morgan, you just have to do this for yourself. And I put my arms around myself and I patted my chest and I was like, Morgan, you're going to be okay. You did so good today. And I talked to myself like I was talking to my 5-year-old daughter. And did I feel stupid? Fuck yeah, I did. But it made me feel a lot better. It really did. It made me feel a lot better. I finally felt comforted. I finally could clear my head and move past whatever I was experiencing. So a big, huge thing with martyrdom is I do this for everyone else and no one does it for me. So then the question is, why don't you do it for yourself? Because if you're willing to do things for other people, but you're not willing to do them for yourself, oh, red flag. And isn't that crazy? Why would we do such a thing, right? So really pay attention how much energy you are putting out there, wishing other people would do or exchange or give you back. And instead, maybe figure out a way you can do those things for yourself. When you stop living like a martyr, you stop trying to manage how other people see you. Oh, crazy, right? You stop trying to be the savior. You stop trying to earn your way into belonging somewhere. You stop expecting life to reward your suffering, and instead you reward yourself with your own authenticity. And that is literally what the planets and the stars above are asking us to do right now. That is the shift. That is the heart-centered way. That is the authentic way to living your life. It's not light and fluffy. It's actually really hard, and you got to be brave, but it is totally liberating. All right, that's it for today's episode of Oops, I'm Evolving. Thanks for hanging out and diving into the messy, real shit with me. If you're loving the vibe, make sure to follow the podcast, leave a review, and find me on socials to keep the conversation going. Remember, growth isn't always pretty, but damn, it's worth it. Catch you next time.